Good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. So this show, let me, hang on, I'm focusing. Yeah, so this live stream, when I originally put this down, we was going to talk about Vladimir Putin's nuclear weapons. And, there's a lot of these red lines being crossed, and a lot of people are starting to come to the conclusion that Vladimir Putin may never use his nuclear weapons. So this stream, I was going to talk about how Vladimir Putin's conventional army would fare against the West, and how it's totally set up differently to the West, and how for a long protracted war, Vladimir Putin and the Russians do have an advantage. But right now, the situation in the Middle East is absolutely catastrophic. We've got, literally, the updates are coming every few minutes. The Israelis have started to do raids into Lebanon. Mainstream media are reporting that the Lebanese army have left the border. So there's no more troops now on the border between Israel and Lebanon. So it looks like any minute now, this hour, maybe next hour, maybe midnight. I don't know if they want to do it like 1 minute past midnight, say it's on the 1st of October that they did the invasion. But it seems that right now there's a ground invasion into Lebanon, almost imminent. There's a mass buildup of tanks, mass buildup of logistics, all the sort of stuff that we've talked about on this channel before that you would need to do, put those in place before you do a ground invasion. Now, obviously, the ground invasion has not happened. We don't know if it's going to happen. It looks, in my opinion, like it's going to happen. But what I would say is we could be at a pivotal moment right now in history when, if the Israelis go into Lebanon and start using the same tactics that they've used in Gaza, you could see the whole Islamic world in the Middle East unite, and everybody would then be against Israel. That would bring in the United States. This could be the event that everybody's talking about. I don't know if this is going to happen. What I will do is I will keep going back and refreshing the screen, and every time there's an update, I will give you the update. But what we will do, guys, we'll start with just some local news from the UK, what's been happening, and then we're going to go into things that have been happening around the world. We're going to talk about, like I said, guys, I know you. Okay, so quite a few people have just joined, so I'll just say the first bit again. This video, we was going to talk about Vladimir Putin, and he may decide not to use nuclear weapons. If that is the case, what are his options? What are his options conventionally? What are his options asymmetrically? Then, as I was coming down and putting the videos up, we saw a lot of stuff happening in the Middle East. So I thought, right, okay, it's looking like a ground invasion could actually happen tonight in the Middle East. I don't know if it's going to happen. It looks likely it will, in my opinion. And like I said, if they use the same tactics that they've used in Gaza, you could see within 24 hours the whole of the Middle East uniting against Israel. So let's just get on with it then, guys. Oh, guys, do you like my cape? I'm a cape guy now. I wear capes. So, hi, Stacey. Yes, the internet is sorted. I don't know how to use a cape. I'm useless at capes. I'm a cape novice. How do you use a cape? Right, guys, capes look cool, but they're not very practical for when you're sitting doing live streams. I may have to take this cape off. Right, so let's go straight to this one then. There's a movement out in the UK, and it's trending, called Breeding for Britain. Absolutely wild. So politicians now are coming out, in particularly this Kemi Badenoch. What's her name? Kemi Badenoch, yeah. So Kemi Badenoch, she's one of the front runners for the Conservative leader. She's come out and she's saying that young people should be encouraged to have children. Now, you can take a lot from this. We don't have enough children in the United Kingdom. We don't. Our birth rate has slumped. We don't have enough children. People could say that the influx, and people could say that the influx of migrants into the United Kingdom is to keep the economy going, because if we didn't do that, if we didn't, flood the markets with cheap migrant labor, then in like 30, 40 years, the factory had stopped, the industry had stopped, GDP would absolutely plummet, and a load of bankers would lose a load of money. So that's one argument for immigration and why people are saying it's happening. It's really interesting, and it says a lot now that people are talking about this and people are identifying it, and and looking at demographics and thinking, okay, if we don't have more children, if we have less children, then if we have less children, hang on, I'm saying this wrong. Yeah, if we have less children than the amount of people that are dying, then obviously we're gonna decline, and there will be no English or whatever you want to call that anymore. We will just self delete. So no, we'll talk about that one after. So we'll go straight onto the Russians now, guys, because lots of you in this chat have been saying, hang on. Yeah. So lots of you guys have been saying about, we think Putin is bluffing with his nuclear weapons. Well, I went down that road, and I thought about that, and I thought, well, if Putin is bluffing, or whether they're having technical problems with their nuclear weapons, I don't know. But I went down the route of maybe, just maybe, Vladimir Putin is looking at fighting this conflict conventionally, by the means of his forces against NATO's forces. Now, on paper, it sounds like a done deal for NATO. It sounds like, NATO will whitewash these guys in like 3 days, as some NATO generals have said. But what people are not understanding is the asymmetric dimension, the asymmetric warfare, the sabotage, all these other dimensions that go into conflict. And I was talking to my friend last night he's actually in Poland at the moment, but he's Ukrainian. And he was saying that if the Russians lose this conflict and the Ukrainians manage to push the Russians out of Ukraine and restore the borders back to 2013, then that would be an end for Russia. And Russia would be balkanized. It would be resorted to, small pieces of, St. Petersburg, Moscow, and a little bit of Northern Territory. So they know what's at stake. And it's really, really key that the Russians tried to test one of their intercontinental ballistic missiles, I think a week ago, and it catastrophically failed in the launch pad. So let me just share this screen with you guys. We're going to talk about this for a little bit and show you what it actually means. So Russia's new Sarmat ballistic missile blows up during test launch. So this is not a nuclear missile. That's what everybody needs to understand. What they were trying to test was not a nuclear missile. It was the vehicle that would launch a nuclear missile. So think of the nuclear missile as the bomb, and then think of the Sarmat as the rocket that carries the bomb. So analysis of satellite image show a 60-meter crater at the silo, suggesting a catastrophic failure after ignition. I don't know if this is. I don't know how true this is. Obviously, but I'll take it at face value. So what we can see there is kind of like, remember when Britain tried to fire the Trident missile system from the submarine? The Russians have also had a failure as well. This doesn't mean that Russia doesn't have a nuclear capability. It means they don't have a nuclear projection capability. He can still put this thing on the back of a truck, drive it somewhere, the nuclear weapons, drive it somewhere and detonate it. That said, I'm starting to think that he is bluffing and he wouldn't do this. If you look what the United States have said, the United States were very clear with Russia. They said, listen, if you guys use a nuclear weapon in Ukraine, now that's key and we'll come back to it. If you use a nuclear weapon in Ukraine, then we will take out all your systems all around the world with our Air Force. It was probably worded differently, but that's basically what they said. They said one nuclear weapon in Ukraine, we're going to use our Air Force and we're going to conventionally take out all your systems. So the United States, they have that capability. They have that capacity. I've said it lots of times before. The world's biggest Air Force is the United States Air Force. The world's second biggest Air Force is the United States Navy. So the amount of air power the United States can bring to bear is just unbelievable. Now, the Russians know this, they understand this, they know they're not going to be able to compete, so they back down. So they're like, right, okay, we won't fire a nuclear weapon in Ukraine. Now, there's some reports out that this may have already happened in Donetsk. I don't know if those reports are true, but there's some people saying that a dirty bomb was detonated in Donetsk. I genuinely don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I can't really find any reliable articles to talk about it. So I'm just saying it's rumors at this point. Time will tell. But what is key is are these regions in Ukraine that are these regions in Russia that the Ukrainians have pushed into. So when the Ukrainians pushed into these regions in Russia, a lot of people were saying, right, this could be the moment when Putin uses a nuclear bomb. Because under those circumstances, Putin hasn't used a nuclear bomb in Ukraine. He's used a nuclear bomb in his own territory. So people were saying, right, Putin's going to use a nuclear bomb and we wouldn't be able to do anything because, he's using the nuclear bomb on his own territory, but he's killing a load of Ukrainians and he's showing the world he can do it. And he still didn't do it. So all this time that goes on, it's kind of like, you get your bluff called, which I think what's happening. So recently, Vladimir Putin, they've changed. I don't think they've done it officially yet, but they've signaled that it's going to be words to the effect of that Russia will, and it's a bit ridiculous. Russia will allow the use of nuclear weapons if they're attacked unconventionally with support of somebody else that has nuclear weapons. It's a bit ridiculous the way they've worded it. But when I read this, I was like, right, okay, well, that's happened a lot anyway. That's happening all the time. The Ukrainians are firing NATO weapons into Russia. They're just not using long-range weapons. They're firing and taking out, enemy systems in Russia anyway. It was only like a couple of months ago since the Ukrainians took out the nuclear early warning system in Russia, and if that didn't start alarm bells ringing, I don't know what will. So you've got this situation now in Russia where the Russians are flim-flamming around. Everybody's, I can assume that people are saying to Vladimir Putin, you need to use a nuclear weapon, you need to show people. But on the same hand, Putin knows if he uses a nuclear weapon, if he can, which I'm starting to think he can't, if he does, then the potential is that the United States Air Force goes and takes out all of Vladimir Putin's, stock, and it's just going to be a bad day for Putin because he'll have all his kit and equipment destroyed, and the Ukrainians would literally be able to have a free fall all the way up to Moscow and buy beers in hryvnia, which is the local currency in Ukraine. Right, guys, I'm just going to refresh this Middle East thing because it's just come up as there's 2 alerts. Right, 15 minutes ago, Lebanese army reportedly withdrawing from Israel border. Right, so we've done that. We will come on to this later on, guys, and talk about this even more. So what you've got to think about when you're talking about Russia is the one thing that the Russians have. The one thing that the Russians have, and they are not afraid to use, it's their manpower. You look back for the last 1,000 years, it's how Russia fight wars. They just throw vast amount of people at that problem. They just keep going. They keep throwing the people at that problem. Here in the West, in NATO, we wouldn't accept those fatality rates. We wouldn't accept that attrition rate. But the Russians, I can guarantee you, they will accept that rate. So I've said it lots of times. We're coming up to a situation now where when it's going to be a competition between brute force, as in the Russians, and a sharp knife. I guess these two things are gonna fight, and we're gonna see who comes out on top. I genuinely don't know. I think there's a lot of things that we just don't. We're not even contemplating, like the dimensions of asymmetric warfare. Now, I'll touch on this more later when we talk about the Iranian capability. And people, we underestimate our enemies all the time. We underestimate people, and our adversaries. Their one goal. Sorry, I'm talking like I'm in the military. I'm not in the military anymore. The West's adversaries. Their one goal is to look at the West and think, right, how can we defeat them? And they know they're not, the Russians know they're not going to defeat the West in a conventional sense. But where they can defeat, potentially the West is in a war of attrition, a war of manufacturing, and, just throwing vast amounts of numbers at this problem. Because, guys, ultimately, that's how the Russians will win. If this conflict continues and, there's no chance of peace. I don't care what, Zelensky's gone over and he spoke to Trump and they've had it's all smoke and mirrors. I don't for one second think it's at all credible. I just, it just seems like circus and pantomime to me. The Middle East is about, it could happen today. It could happen at midnight. Looking at, my analysis, hang on guys. My analysis of this would be, the time to do it would be midnight or 1 minute past 12. So just a quick message here, guys. I'm just getting the messages pop up. Israel has just launched a ground invasion into Lebanon. So what we know is that the Israelis are launching limited ground incursions into Lebanon. We also know that the Lebanese army have left the border. So I can't find anything to confirm this, but I'm literally refreshing my screen all the time and looking what's happening. But the situation, it could be on the 1st of October that the Israeli ground offensive has begun. And again, like I keep saying, if the Israelis use the same tactics that they use in Gaza, in Lebanon, you're going to see the whole of the Middle East united against Israel. And then you're going to see the United States having to back Israel up. Also, under the radar, you'll see the United Kingdom backing Israel by letting the United States use RAF Akatere, which is a huge base in southern Cyprus. The key thing about RAF Akatere, people say, but the United States have so many aircraft carriers. They have so many X, Y, and Z. That's all well and good. You can't sink an island. Well, I don't think you can sink an island anyway. It's very difficult to sink an island. And I don't think in recorded history there's been an incident where a hostile nation has managed to sink an enemy island. Anyway, so RAF Akatere, it's key because not just because of the fast jets that are able to fly out, offensive sorties. It's because of the real estate that commands. And what you can do with that amount of real estate, you can fly in, I don't know, US Marines, 101st Airborne, 82nd Airborne, whatever. And you can put them in accommodation, you can barracks them, you can billet them, you can have them there as surge capacity. And then what they can do then, they can get on transport aircraft and they can be flown into wherever in that region really quickly. So it wouldn't surprise me if already RAF Akatere was full of Western Special Forces, scoping the ground, high altitude, in high altitude aircraft, looking at, high value targets, looking to prosecute those targets. I don't know what's happening, guys. I'm just speculating at this point. So back to the Russians then. We will keep coming on to the Middle East and I will keep getting, as I get further and further onto it. So, it's basically the manpower that the Russians have, the manpower that they can push forwards. Now, the Russians on their own are a formidable industrial, they're a formidable industrial might. The Russian economy now is more, guys, do you see the rain there? Where is it? Yeah, it's like the rain is blasting at this window, and I'm surprised you can't hear it because it's really loud here. But the Russians are a huge military force and industrial force as well as a military force. And by huge, I mean size-wise. The Russians can produce a lot of stuff. Now, the Russians are also allied with China, which can produce a lot more stuff. The Russians are also, allied with the North Koreans, which can also produce a lot of stuff. And more importantly, I think, than any of these two allies, I think is their partnership with Iran, which nicely segues me into the Middle East. So the partnership with Iran and the missile capacity of the Iranians and the non-conventional capacity of the Iranians, because people don't understand the size of the Iranian army. It's pretty big. I think it's like 600,000 or something. That said, I get the argument. It's not all about numbers, and that's fine. I get that. But the IRGC, it's called the Iranian Republican IRGC or something. It's basically the Iranian Revolutionary something Guard or something. Basically, these guys, they're a military unit and they have a huge military budget, and their role is a non-conventional role. They call it soft war, grey war, asymmetric war, non-conventional war, guerrilla war, anything like that. It's basically all these things that we can't deal with. It's, recruiting people in host countries to be saboteurs. It's flooding the borders with migrants, for potential use further on. And I'm not saying that's happening anywhere. I'm just saying it would be a tactic, and it would be a very effective tactic if a lot of these migrants that were coming here, and I'm not saying they are, guys, I'm saying it would be an effective tactic if you knew a war was coming with another country, if you could flood their borders with your own enemy troops. And the best thing about it is that country would pay for it. So you would pay for your own, if people were coming here, again, I need to caveat this because I don't want my videos to disappear. I'm not saying this is happening, but if for some reason the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, or whatever they're called, did manage to infiltrate some of these smuggling gangs, did manage to infiltrate some of these criminal gangs, it could be an option to those guys, because that's what they do, asymmetric, non-conventional guerrilla warfare. It would be a cost-effective way of them getting their soldiers onto foreign soil. And then that country would pay for those themselves. Not only would that country pay for them themselves, but that country would also put their own public at risk by paying for them. So it's a fantastic tactic if you're wanting to see the downfall of the West. Now, I'm not saying this is happening. I'm sure you guys know my thoughts. I'm not saying it's happening. I'm just saying it could be an option for some people. And then those people, they're your saboteurs that you can pay. Not only can you not pay them, what you can say to them is, right, guys, we don't want you guys to get caught. So what we'll do is we will pay for your trip to whatever country. You're going over on a boat, you're going to whatever. You're going to enter this country as a refugee. On a specific time, on a specific date, I want you to go to this water pump right here, show them on Google Maps or whatever. I want you to go right here and just destroy it. But it has to be at this time and it has to be at this date. If they say that to 10, 15 people, all those people are working independently. They don't know each other. They've got no connection to each other. There's no transaction records of money being transferred between accounts. They've never actually met anyone in the United Kingdom who could give them away. It's genius the way that this could happen. So that's one of the things that the Iranians specialize in. And they're quite open about this. They tell people how open they are about it. Now, we always talk about the relationship between Iran and Russia and how the Iranians are supplying the Russians with drones. The Iranians are supplying the Russians with long-range missile strike capability. Could it be possible that the Iranians are also, and again, the Russians are not novices at this. The Russians know exactly what they're doing as well. The Russians fought a Cold War for a long time. And a lot of people say that the Cold War never ended. So look at all these things holistically now and think, could the Russians and the Iranians be plotting together to use asymmetric warfare against the West? Absolutely. I don't think it's anything controversial or anything going down a conspiracy lane, to say that this could be happening. And I'd say not only could it be happening, I'd say it's likely. And that doubles up with the fact that the Iranians could get nuclear weapons from the Russians. Remember the difference, guys, between a nuclear weapon, the thing that goes kaboom with radiation, and an intercontinental ballistic missile, the thing that goes up and travels really far and then drops down. Two totally different things. I mean, you can put on an intercontinental ballistic missile, you could fill it with, I don't know, sweeping brushes or something random. It doesn't have to be nuclear tipped. And equally, a nuclear weapon doesn't have to go on a missile. And people kind of get these things mistaken and use them synonymously. They're not synonymous. They have clear roles. You can put a nuclear weapon on the back of a flatbed truck, and you can drive that into a region of Ukraine or wherever. You can then have all your technicians around it, and you can say, okay, Sergey, in 25 minutes, this thing gonna go. And then you drive off, or maybe a bit longer than 25 minutes, but you know where I'm going. You can, that's how you can do it. With the intercontinental ballistic missiles, they're the things that go up into space, go into orbit, or, whatever you, they may not go into orbit. They may just go into space and then come down. So they're the two things. Now, the Russians had a massive catastrophic fail, allegedly, of one of their intercontinental ballistic missile systems. So we don't actually know what's happening there with that system. But, the nuclear weapon, that could really be a key, another key development. And the Russians have said to the Americans, we talked about this yesterday, the Russians said to the Americans, listen, guys, we're not going to test fire a nuclear weapon if you guys don't. I think it's a bit weird as well that this came out after the Russians tried to test fire an intercontinental ballistic missile. It's kind of like saying, oh guys, I broke my sword. Should we not have a sword fight? Should we just have a fist fight? Well, no, dude, you broke your sword. You turned up for a sword fight. You broke your sword. We're having a sword fight. It's not my problem your sword's broken. So that's kind of the vibes that I'm getting from that. Let me just reload this thing, guys, because it's showing that there's two updates. Nah, it's still from 41 minutes ago. Yeah, the breaking news, guys, is still that the Lebanese army have reportedly withdrawn from the Israel border. This comes as it's been reported that the Israelis have mounted limited strikes into Lebanon. And I'll just repeat what I said earlier. It's guys, I can see there's aliens talk in the chat. Right, there's aliens talk in the chat. Are we all talking about aliens now? Right, Pineapple started talking about aliens. Right, guys, we're going to come on. Right, I have got some screen shares to share with you guys about aliens later. So, Ireland just seems so quiet about the current conflict. Is that unique? Hang on. Right. Okay, so how big do we think this will get in October or holding off till November? Well, Scott, I don't know if you've just come to the but I said it's looking like the 1st of October could be the day when the Israeli ground invasion starts in Lebanon. I don't know if this is going to happen. All I can do is speculate with you guys. We can try and make a way forwards. What we can say, though, is if the Israelis use the same tactics that they've been using in Gaza, and for those of you who don't know, so Kenzie, I'll come on to that comment after in a minute, Kenzie. So we don't know what the Israelis are going to do. Somebody will know, and I can guarantee you that person's making a ton of money on the stock market right now. But the tactics that the Israelis have used in Gaza, they've been, attacking a building. The building's been evacuated. They're then just, bulldozing that building down. People are saying, questioning these tactics and saying they're brutal, which they are. But the reason they're doing that is so nobody can get behind them. So they can move forwards in an advanced line and they can take all those buildings, and they know that there's no one going to get behind them. No small group's going to sneak into a building behind them and attack them from the rear. So that's why they're doing that. If they do this in Lebanon, guys, you're going to see the Middle East united. I just saw something about the French. I'm trying to find it now. I just saw something about, NATO and Russia. Yeah. So so Scott's saying, no, we're talking about NATO and Russia. Okay. Right. So what we're finding is, if you look back through when these conflicts started, you will get, honestly, and it's so weird because all focus will focus on like the Israelis, and that, like, we'll focus on Israel and Gaza, and then the focus will go off Ukraine, and then it seems like it'll die down, and then all of a sudden, oh, it's over back to Ukraine again. So what I would say is, it could, like, if we go off those timings, we would be looking at mid to late October before another huge escalation in Ukraine. And again, I don't know if this is true, but I'd say from what we know from watching the news previously, how things change, how the focus shifts from one war zone to another, then we would be, and right now the focus is being pushed towards Israel. And it's being pushed towards Israel. If you think back a couple of weeks before that, it was pushed into, Ukraine because the Ukrainians did the incursion. Well, I guess you could call it an invasion now. The Ukrainians did the invasion into Russia. And then before that, it was all back onto the Gaza Strip. And, it's back and forth between these two things. But usually there's about a 2-week gap. Well, not a 2-week gap, but a 2-week changeover period. So I'd say media focus will be on Israel and the Middle East at the moment, and then in 2 weeks it could potentially go over to Ukraine again. 2 weeks, a lot can happen in 2 weeks. So that's why I think it's going to be into next year before crossroads come with Russia. So let's just focus on the Middle East for a minute, guys. So the French have recently come out a few hours ago, and I don't know if this is true. I saw it on a post. Guys, I don't know if this is true or not, but the French have said they may consider supplying arms to Lebanon. I genuinely don't know if that's true. That could just be, I didn't have enough time to fact check it. But what I did find out is that the French, let me check it, guys. I think it's the French foreign minister is urging Israel not to invade Lebanon. So he's come out in like the last 4 hours ago. And, he's made a speech and he's saying that, he doesn't want the French to, his name's Jean Nol or something. Basically, he's come out saying they don't want anybody to invade Lebanon, and the French will step up its support for the Lebanese army. Now, I don't know what that means. Some people are saying that means that the French are going to arm the Lebanese. I don't know what that means. What it does mean is what it says. They will step up their support for the Lebanese army. Now, can you imagine that the conflict that we would be in there if we're in a situation where the French are supporting militarily the Lebanese, France part of NATO, the Americans are supporting the Israelis, and then the French and American, you can imagine the chaos that's going to cause, right? With all the, with everything that's happening in the world. And again, if you take a step back, guys, and those of you who've been following my channel, you'll know exactly what I'm about to say. Take a step back and just think, right, all these roads lead to the same place. All these roads lead to the United States in the Middle East fighting a war against Iran and its proxies, and the United Kingdom leading what's left of NATO in Eastern Europe against the Russians. Everything makes sense. All these little bits of rhetoric, the French are now going to support the Lebanese, whatever. That's just more to this diversions now. It's more to this, we don't want to support the United States in Israel. We want to distance ourselves. Why? Well, look at the demographics of France. They have got a huge Muslim population. They're going to want to show, on the face of it anyway, that the French are against Muslims being killed, because then they won't have riots on their streets. They won't have mass protests. They won't have all the other things that come along with that. So that's why the French are, in my opinion, guys, my speculation and my analysis. So that's why the French are coming out. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all pomp and circus and pantomime. You've got to look at why these people are saying this. What drives them? What makes them say this? So it may be that the French will like I said, that I don't know whether they're going to support them militarily, whether they're just going to put, I don't know, share memes about them or just give them a thumbs up on their Facebook posts. I genuinely don't know. This has literally come out in the last couple of hours. But what it shows is this divergence. What it shows is the decoupling of NATO, the decoupling of the perceived decoupling of NATO, the perceived decoupling of the United States and the European countries. And I've been talking about this for months, months and months and months ago, when, before there was even a seedling of it about, we said this was going to happen. Let me just, hang on, guys, there's been more updates. Right, that's weird. It's saying that there's an update. Right, okay. Right, Israeli military declares parts of northern border closed military zone. I don't know what that means. Let's click on it. Hang on. Israeli military declares parts of northern border closed military zone. Israeli Defense Force has declared the areas around the communities of. So, in fact, I'll share this with you guys real quick so we can see this together. Let's piece this jigsaw puzzle together. So here we are, guys. Oh, hang on, there's some more. Right, hang on, right. So there's wow, okay, there's quite I know that's going backwards in time, actually, right? So this one, I think this is the last, that's the last one. So this one here, guys. Israeli military declares parts of the northern border closed. Israeli Defense Forces has declared the areas around I'm not going to try and pronounce them, guys, in northern Israel near the border with Lebanon as a closed military zone. So what this will mean is, as it's a closed military zone, no press will be allowed in there. Remember yesterday how I told you that when you see these CNN and BBC and Sky News reporters stood on the border and all, explosions are happening behind them and they're talking, just behind the camera, there will be a press officer from the military, and they'll be saying, listen, you've got to cut your feed now, or don't report on this, or this is the official line. And that's literally how it works. So what you can see now, this is a closed military zone. All those press, they will be told to leave and go back to their hotels. Yeah. So entry to those areas around the communities was prohibited, the IDF said. It said that the decision was taken following a situational assessment and signed off by the chief of Israel's command, Ori Gorin. And then we've got a map. I don't know what this is. Right. I'm going to come off that because I don't know what just happened there. But what you can see, this situation in Israel, I mean, things are happening really quickly. Just since I've been on this stream, there's been more and more updates to this situation. I'd say the fluidity of these events, you could be looking like a ground invasion into Lebanon. You could really be looking like a ground invasion into Lebanon tonight, guys. You could be looking, I think, if it's going to come, the way I look at things, if it was me, I would do it on I'd do it on the first. I don't know why. I would just my intuition would do it on the first, midnight on the 1st of October. 1 minute past midnight, 1st of October. So the clocks have just changed. The date will have just changed over. And you're like, right, okay, tanks roll. Like I keep saying, if they use the same tactics that they've used in Gaza, you can see the Middle East uniting against Israel. And that is literally biblical end time stuff. It really is. There's no denying that it doesn't say that in the Bible. What I will say, though, from my experience, my limited experience of working with Israelis, when the Israelis used to come to the United Kingdom to do cross training, they always used to ask to do cross training with parachute regiment, which I obviously was. Now, the way that the parachute regiment do fighting in built-up area, it's a little bit different to other units in the context that they go a lot faster and their risk appetite is a lot higher than other units. So it's very full on, it's very forceful, and it's very aggressive. It's really aggressive. You don't move. Sorry, you don't stop moving. It's a constant battle, and you're constantly running, constantly fighting, constantly moving. Whereas Some other units, they may wish to take their time. They may not want to, they may wish to take their time and, be more methodical. But the problem with fighting in built-up areas is you can never cover, and again, I'm being biased because this is the way I've been taught. You can never cover all those windows. You can never cover all those doorways. You can never cover all those, little bits of dead ground, those little hills that you can't see behind. You can never cover every corner. You just can't. You don't have enough manpower. You never will. So the theory behind going fast and potentially, going up, moving through spaces that you might be better waiting for fire support or indirect fire is just that, speed is cover. And I think that's why the Israelis wanted to cross-train with the parachute regiment and do that type of training rather than training with other units who were slower. They used to take their time and get assets in place, and when you're operating in a built-up area, guys, time is everything. If you think about an average infantry soldier, they're carrying 10 magazines of 30, maybe, I don't know, maybe 12 or something. Either way, at rapid fire, that's one round every 2 seconds. That's 10 minutes ammunition. Now, you think about what they have to do with 10 minutes of ammunition. That is not a lot of ammunition at all. And one round every 2 seconds, that's kind of is slow when you think about people panicking, people comfort firing, and all sorts of wild stuff that happens when you're fighting in a built-up area. But anyway, that's why the Israelis as I understand it, that's why the Israelis wanted to train. I never really met any of the Israelis. We came across them. They were always in a different barracks to us. We never really mingled or anything. But from what I've seen, they're solid guys. They do their job well, and as you can see, they're in a really what's the word I'm looking for? They're in a really difficult kinetic situation at the moment. Whether you agree with these wars or not, they're happening. So all we can do is sit back and just commentate and try and figure out what's happening, because at some point we're going to be, it's going to be like we're going to be on rationing or something. Anyway, guys, right, I'm starting to see the same picture of the IDF inside Lebanon, so there's a good chance they've entered Lebanon and are setting up for the attacks. Yeah. So if you remember when they did the attack in the ground invasion, I guess, into Gaza, that's how it started. It was limited incursions. It was small units. They would go in to strike or seize a certain objective. They would then leave. They would then do it again. They would then do it again until, you've got a full-on ground invasion. The amount of, if you've seen the pictures of and again, these pictures we're seeing on social media, on the news outlets, I don't know what these pictures are. These pictures could have been taken 10 years ago. Well, probably not 10 years ago, but these pictures could have been taken years ago. We can only speculate what they are. But if we're taking the pictures at face value, this shows a lot of tanks, a lot of logistics lined up, which is what you would do before before a ground invasion. I think I was doing a live stream a couple of nights ago, and somebody said, could there be a ground invasion from the Houthis? And I said, listen, for a ground invasion, you need a lot of logistics, you need a lot of armor, you need a lot of manpower, you need fuel, food, spare ammunition, because there's only so much people can carry. And you can see all this stuff. There's no real way to hide it. There isn't. So that's what, that was kind of my response to that. What you could have seen was limited incursions by the Houthis, small cross-border raids. That could have been, a thing. But what you're looking at, the hardware that the Israelis have on the border, that is looking like a ground invasion into Lebanon. That's what it looks like. I'm not saying, I'm just giving you my analysis of what's happening. I keep saying it, guys, if they use the same tactics that they used in Gaza, which I think they will, I really do. I think they will, because when you train an army, you don't train an army for two, you don't train on two different types of fighting in built-up area. It's impossible. It's too confusing. You train them one way and that's the way. It's like when people say, like that there's a shoot to kill policy. I'm like, what? Shoot to kill policy? Literally all policies to shoot are to do that. Or why are you doing it? That is literally, well, I've never been on a training course where people say, Yeah, right. If somebody comes up and under these circumstances try and shoot them in the leg, it doesn't happen. It's always, it's centre mass, and that's the way you're taught. Because in stressful situations, it's very hard to do simple things. It really is. So anyway, yeah, they could be setting up for the attacks. They really could. I think if it comes, it's going to come soon. The way we're looking at things, the way that things are moving, like really quickly on the ground. Right, guys, there was some talk about aliens further up this chat. Right, I can't find it. It's gone. It's gone. It's vanished. It's vanished in the chat. This is going to be a bloodbath, right? This is going to be a bloodbath. Yeah, Scott, I honestly, like, what really grips me and it really bothers me that when people are talking about, and I find myself guilty of this as well, especially sat here in the United Kingdom, like in my lovely new cave, all nice and dry, we look at these things and we look at numbers on a screen, and each one of those numbers, like the Ukrainians have lost this many people, the Russians have lost it, and it's in the thousands. Each one of those people has a story. Each one of those people had a life, a mum, a dad, kids, brothers, sisters, a wife, a husband, hopes, dreams, aspirations, and all that's gone. And it's gone for what? What's been achieved? And it really bothers me how I see people on politicians do it. They talk about a win, and if the Russians win, if the Ukrainians win, if the Israelis win, and all the time you've got these young people, and they are young mostly. The age of most infantry is like 18, 19, 20. That's the age of like most private soldiers, which obviously the biggest amount of is the biggest rank. By biggest, I mean the most of them. So that's the average age. So when you're talking about these fatalities, that's somebody's life you're talking about. And I've been to funerals of my friends, and it's devastating to see the impact this has on people's lives. And then when you get to the end of it in a few years' time and everybody's friends again, you look back and you think, what just happened? Really? What just happened? Some wild stuff happened. And yeah, I feel bad for the soldiers. I feel bad for the civilians. I mean, can you imagine? It's very hard to imagine, but put yourself in this situation. So put yourself in this situation, guys, wherever you are in the world. And right, I don't know how much I can talk about on here. Well, I'll give you one that was in the news. There was an incident on the news in the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. There was a Russian. I can't remember what it was. Like a off-road vehicle or something. I don't know what it was. BPM or something. It's like I think it's got 8 wheels and it looks like it's amphibious, but it's not. But it's supposed to be. Anyway, one of these things drove into Kiev, and there was a family trying to escape Kiev, and they were getting in their car. And the Russians, and again, this is from mainstream media. I'll try and put the link in the description. And the Russians just fired on this car. It was a civilian vehicle. The Russians just fired on it. It killed the mum, the dad, shot the son in the spine. The son will never walk again. And they were, and he got sent to hospital, and he'll never walk again. Lost his mum and dad. For what? What was those Russians that went in there? What was their objective? Was that their objective, to cause that much carnage and chaos to that little boy's life? It's just absolutely senseless. It really is. Sorry guys, sorry to go on a rant, but it really just bothered me when when the people in the mainstream, they're talking about a win, a Ukrainian win. What if the Russians win? It's not a game. These are people's lives. These are people's families and hopes and dreams that are just being shattered. And again, the civilian population do take a toll. So, like I said, imagine wherever you are, guys, in the world, that and just feel safe that if you live in the United Kingdom or the United States, that it's highly unlikely that this is going to happen. The rest of Europe, we can't be so sure. But imagine where you are in your local town, all of a sudden, a load of tanks come in with people from another country, and they just start shooting people. and nobody's there to help you. There's airplanes flying over and indiscriminately, destroying flats, apartment blocks, houses. You've got no power. You don't know what's happening. Your TV's gone off. All the radio your internet's gone down. You don't know. Can you imagine the panic for you and your children that you would feel in that circumstance? That's what the Ukrainians went through. That's what's happening. That's what's been happening in Gaza. That's what's been happening in Israel as well. That's what's been happening. It looks like that's going to start happening in Lebanon, and all these things, it's just the fear that these things sow. It's unbelievable. Right, guys, I definitely saw it. Right, hang on, guys. Right, what have we got? I'm sure I saw some aliens videos. Right. I've actually seen videos of Palestine 5 years ago. The Middle East is actually a beautiful place before the current conflict. If it ever stops, I recommend. Yeah, guys, I've spent a lot of time in the Middle East. I've spent probably 5 years living in Baghdad, right in the middle of Baghdad. I spent 2 years living in Al-Kindi Street. If you want to check that out on Google Maps, Al-Kindi Street, it's in the center of Baghdad. I then went and lived just outside the British Embassy in the Green Zone. It's on a Friday night, we used to have a cigar, a T-bone steak, and a bottle of Beaujolais on the rooftops. And we used to watch the sun go down over the, I think it's the Tigris or the Euphrates. I always get mixed up. And it was absolutely beautiful. So some places in that, like the country is beautiful. The problem is there's vast amounts of corruption. And when the West, with NATO, went into Iraq in 2003, we thought that they were ready for democracy, but the problem was that they weren't ready to be democratized. And looking back now, I think it was right. This is my opinion. I think Iraq was the wrong decision. Ground invasion of Iraq, I think it was the wrong decision, but for the right reasons. Now, just the fact that we managed to overthrow Saddam and get rid of his Ba'ath Party was an absolute positive. Because if you guys do any research and you know what Saddam Hussein's sons used to do, those guys, just for the things that Saddam Hussein's sons used to do, the invasion of Iraq was justified, in my eyes. Some of the absolute horror stories I've heard firsthand of Iraqis, it's unbelievable. And, we get this image of the war in Iraq being, the Iraqis didn't want us there. My experience is totally different. When I went to Iraq, I had grown men coming out and crying, saying thank you, and hugging us and saying thank you. None of this is ever portrayed on the media. You never see any footage of this. But that's my experience. I never saw the people in Iraq anyway. I never saw the people coming out being openly hostile to Western soldiers in Iraq. Yes, it did happen. I know it happened. I know lots of incidents. There was incidents while I was there when 6 RMPs got taken and executed. There's lots of bad things that happened, but my personal experience was never, it was never anything but the locals being positive towards the Western troops that were on the ground there. The cost of war isn't money. No, it's the people. Yeah, you're right. And the cost of war as well. People don't understand that in the times of war, money doesn't matter. It just gets printed. It's just numbers on a screen. You worry about inflation. You worry about the economy after the war's over. You need to win the war first. So look what's happening in Russia. The Russian economy now, they've printed a load of money. Their economy is doing really, really well. Everything seems to be a lot better in Russia because of these sanctions. Their oil's getting out. They've managed to find new customers, new alliances, new trade routes. They've got their dark fleet that's doing a load of business, and who's paying for that? We're paying for that. We're paying for that with our fuel prices, because all that happens is the Russian oil goes to an intermediate country like Iran or... Oh, guys, hang on. There's been an update. Update coming, guys. Update coming. Hang on. Let me just refresh this. Right. Hang on. Right. No, it's the same. No, that's weird. Just says the same. Right, he just said there was an update. It doesn't. Right, sorry guys. So yeah, aliens. Right, Angela Dorset. Aliens, are you still? Aliens, are you still on reserve? Aliens, are you still on reserve in case of war? Oh, right, okay. Aliens, right. Are we talking about aliens now, Angela, or are we going on something else? I am on the reserves, yes, but I think it would be a long time before I was called up. I think there's plenty of people in front of me, and I've got my cape now. So anyway, guys, I don't have long left. So what I want to talk about quickly is just something about aliens, and it is a bit wild. So I'm going to go onto this screen share with you guys here. Right. So yesterday, all you guys were in the we do Kenza. Right, guys, yesterday I looked at the comments in the stream and you guys were just going wild talking about aliens and all sorts of stuff. So one of the things that really fascinates me is crop circles. I don't think enough research is done onto crop circles. So this is one of the crop circles I just think is absolutely like fantastic. So this is a crop circle here, and I don't know what you guys make of this. I don't know if you think it's CGI or whether you think it's or what. I don't know. I mean, it could be CGI, it could be AI, but this was out in I think this was in 2002 or something that this came out. Now, obviously, that looks like a grey alien. And then you've got this thing here. Now, this thing apparently, it's binary code and it reads a message. And the message is something. And look at the places that all these all these crop circles are appearing. They're all appearing in this region here. And if you've watched my other videos, I did a video on crop circles and witchcraft because it all comes from this area in the United Kingdom, literally bar none. I'd say 90% of the UK's I'd say 90% of the world's crop circles are in the United Kingdom. And 90% of those are in this region here. And if you look at witchcraft and all the occult, that is literally the same area that it's in. So what's the correlation between crop circles and the witchcraft? Now, this binary code here, it reads something like, be aware of the bearers of false gifts. Much pain, there's still time, conduit closing, or something like that. So just that if this is real, and I'll put this link in the description, but it's, and again, it mentions Richard Taylor, a physicist from the University of Oregon, notes that the nodes and stalks and blasts. So you can Google these people. These are real people, and this is documented and it's out there. Oh, hang on, there it is. Yeah. Hang on. Right, here's the message here, guys. Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. There is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing. What is that? Is this real? I mean, seriously, guys, if this is real, is this not like the most amazing thing that's ever happened in the history of the world? And I don't know if it's CGI. I don't know. I don't think somebody could have done this as a hoax. We're led to believe that crop circles are kids going out with strings and boards attached. I just do not believe that is the case. How could you make a structure like that with strings and boards? And the fact that nobody's investigating into this. It's like, what? Can you imagine if every morning in the summer you woke up and there was a spray painted message on your wall, on your house? Would you just think, oh, yeah, it's just what happens, and would you not bother about it? Or would you move heaven and earth to get to the bottom and find an answer? And then don't the public have a right to know what crop circles are? And that message, beware of false bearers of gifts. We oppose deception, much pain. There's still time, conduit closing. Isn't that the most ominous message, if it's true, that's out there? Guys, I'll put all these links in the I'll put all these links in the description. Guys, do we want a dedicated... Guys, do we want a dedicated UFO stream where we're just talking about UFOs and aliens? And what I'll do is I will put an agenda on. I'll say, right, guys, this is what the agenda of the stream is going to be. We're going to go first. We're going to go the first 20 minutes on crop circles, second 20 minutes on UFOs or UAPs, third 20 minute, last 20 minutes, we're going to go on something else. And then we're going to talk about the wars that are happening all around the world, imminent nuclear disaster, imposing doom, and the rest of the doom, gloom, and war on industrial scale. What are we going to do, guys? Is that how we're going to roll? And I need to wear my glasses for the aliens videos. Right, guys, it looks like it's a go. But just let me show you that one again, because it is wild. I want to read that message again. Because it is insane. I will put all these links in the description. So this thing here, and I don't know if you've seen this before, but this apparently landed in, and you can do a lot of your Googling on this. If this is real, guys, just imagine if this is real and it's not fake. And I don't know whether it is. But if this is real, why is this not all over the paper? Why is not every scientist in the world trying to figure out what it is? But 2002, in a field near Crabwood, Winchester, Hampshire, England, this crop circle appeared. And it's this thing here that's apparently binary code or some sort of code. And when, I don't know how it's done, but if you decode it, you get the message, beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. So who could that be? And again, who are they referring to? Much pain, but still time. That could be elusive. I don't know what that is. There is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing. I mean, is that not just absolutely wild? Anyway, guys, I'm going to go now. Check out Karka. I will indeed check that out. Ashadeen. I will check out Ashadeen. Right, guys, I'm going to go now. I'm going to end the stream. It's been an hour. We've done an hour. We've covered a lot. We still didn't cover all we should have done. Guys, don't forget to like and comment on my stuff and share my stuff. We'll be streaming tomorrow morning on our other platform. I think we're going to see a situation with a ground invasion into Lebanon tonight. I really do. The key combat indicators are the Lebanese army have moved off the border, and the Israelis have put all that area as a media blackout area. So now the military are controlling that whole area. That's what you'd see just before an invasion, because obviously, the Lebanese don't want to see the Israeli tanks rolling in on BBC News. What I think's key as well with this situation is that the French have come out and said they will support the Lebanese army. I don't know what that means. I don't know whether they will support them with humanitarian aid, the only thing I can think of, guys, it has to be militarily. Wild stuff's happening. We could wake up in the morning to World War III. Anyway, guys, I'm going to back to grid. I'll put this up I'll get this downloaded. Then I will upload the links. I'll see you guys tomorrow.